We start with chapter 10, section 10.1, Math 96. Now, this section 10.1, we want to talk about the square root. Like when you want to take a square root of the number, let's say you want to take a square root. This is a symbol we use. And if you don't, this is a radical, and the notation we put here, the number here, they call it root. Let's say the root is 2. And if I have a number under this, the base, then 4 is 2 to power of 2. This 2 is the power of this 2. And if the exponent and the roots, if these two are equal, then 2 is released from the radical. Like, what is square root of 9? 9 is 3 to power of 2. So if the exponent and the roots are equal, then 3 is released from the radical. Now, what is the square root of 841? The square root of 841, you could write 841 in two forms. 849 can be 29 to power of 2 or minus 29 to power of 2. In either case is 841. But when you take the actual radical, you use your calculator. The calculator has a square root. When you see this symbol on the calculator, this is a square root. So you find that symbol and then you type 841 and then equal sign, the calculator give you 29. For instance, what is radical 256? If you want to break a number, what you could do, you could always divide it by 2 first, then 3, and then 5. So if I take 256 and divide it by 2, if I use my calculator, take 256 divided by 2, the calculator would give me 128. And then I divide by 2 again. I keep doing that till I reach to 1. That means I can break 256, and 256 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 256, in fact, is 2 to power of 8. See, root of radical and the base, this 8 divided by 2, it would be 4. So 2 to power of 4 is released from the radical. Some people write it like this. Instead of 2 to power of 8, they write it like this. 2 to power of 2, 2 to power of 2, like that. And then they say, okay, all these 2 cancels. So how many 2 are coming out? 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, or 16. Or is easier to just write 2 to power of 8 and then take and divide by 2, and that would give you that 16. In case of the fractions, 9 is 3 to power of 2, 49 is 7 to power of 2. Both 3 and 7 are released from the radical since their exponents are equal to the root. But remember, 3 has to stay at the numerator and 7 stay at the denominator. Same thing here. It just here, 16 is 4 to power of 2, 9 is 3 to power of 2. Remember, this negative sign is outside of the radical, so stay there. 4 and 3 are released from the radical, but the negative stay there. Now, these are the case that, let's say I have an equation which is y equal x plus 1. And I assume that x is 2. How do I find the y value? You take the 2 and you substitute here. So then it would be 3. What if x is, for instance, negative 3? When you put negative 3, negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. Okay? So now, instead of writing y equal x plus 1, we could also write f of x equal to x plus 1. F of x and y are the same thing. F of x is just tell you that you have a function that variable is x. Like when I write something like f of a equal a plus 3, that means there is a function that letter in that function is a. That's why they have. So f of x and y are the same thing. So in that case, when you have f of x is radical 4x minus 8. Let me hide this so you can just see that. When f of x is radical 4x minus 8, then we ask you to find f of 5. F of 5 means take 5 and substitute for the x. So then see, then you end up having radical 12. And then you could use your calculator and find that. F of 2, you take 2 and you substitute here. You end up having radical 0. What is radical 0? Use your calculator. Radical 0 is 0. I substitute negative 1. When you substitute negative 1, you end up having a negative number. If you have a negative number under the radical is undefined. How do I know that? Go ahead and use your calculator and try to see if you could take a square root of negative 12. Calculator would give you error. It means when the root is even number, which in this case is 2. Normally, if it's 2, we don't write it. If the root is even, you cannot have the negative number. It would be undefined. Like if we ask you to find square root of minus 4, is undefined. What is the fourth root of like minus 17? Undefined, because the root is even. But if the root is odd, is okay. It's okay to have a negative number for odd numbers. Cubic root of minus 8 is minus 2. Okay, so if the root is odd, it's okay to have a negative number. If the root is even, you cannot have a negative number. So in that case, you see for these problems, these two of them, since the number under the radical is negative, both are undefined. The same thing for these problems. They all are very similar. What is g of 9? Just take 9 here. What is g of 2? Put 2 over there. Remember, this negative number is outside of the radical. It has nothing to do with this radical. So do all the calculation for this and then keep that negative outside. See? Here, radical 64 is 8, right? But there is a negative sitting outside already. So then you carry that negative here. Like here, there is a negative. See, in all cases, negative stay outside because negative has nothing to do with this radical. In this case, radical negative 8 is undefined anyway, so it doesn't matter whether it's a negative or not. The whole thing is undefined. Another problems, 0, see? Now, when you have x to power of 2, if you have a variables, and we don't know whether this variable is positive or negative, when you remove the variable, make sure you put the absolute value sign around it. That means absolute value sign means the outcome always has to be positive. So in case you have a variable under the radical and the root is even, when you release that variable, make sure you put the absolute value sign. Well, what if I have something like that? No. If the root is odd, is okay. You don't have to use the absolute. So all the odd roots are okay. It's just the problem is always with the even one. So this is just x. Okay. So in that case, when we have radical 36, 6 is coming out, but x2 become x. So these 2 and 2 cancel. 18 divided by 2 is 9, so it's absolute value. Radical negative 25 is undefined anyway. Why? Because you cannot have the negative number when the root is even number. Now, remember, Under the radical, you have positive. Now, this negative has nothing to do with this. If I use my calculator, or if I do the calculation, 64 is 4 cubed, right? 3 and 3 cancel. 4 is released from the radical. So 4 is coming out, and there is a negative sign waiting here, so it would be -4. If I go too fast, you could always pause the video, please, because there are so many sections to cover. Pause the video so you could actually see the solution, or you could review the explanations. See, the root is even odd numbers. See, all the negatives are coming out, but there is already a negative sign sitting here waiting. So that negative times negative would make it positive. It should be positive. Is absolute value. Why? Because it's even. Some of the, 416 is an even number, it's absolute value. But some of the problems like 16 and 17, 18, we let you know that you don't have to do that because we are assuming something here. Assume that radicand was not formed by raising negative. They are telling you that x is not negative anyway, so you don't have to worry about the absolute value sign. That's what the statement means. Means if you are not sure about the x is always a positive number in this case. So in that case, when x come out, you don't need absolute value. See? You don't need absolute value. In case of odd number, it doesn't matter. Okay, so that would be end of section 1.1.